Colakoglu, may I start with you about what is latest in Turkey? What do you think this specific referendum is about? Is it a confidence vote for the president, or is it a vote about exactly where your country is heading for the very long term? Professor.
Actually, there are lots of mixed messages for both sides, for yes campaigners and no campaigners. But when we look at the constitutional amendment in general, of course, it's a system change from parliamentary system to presidential system in Turkey. So in that sense, of course, this is very important referendum, how Turkey will be governed in next decades. On the other, of course, particularly for the ruling party camp and also yes campaigners, consider this referendum is a confidence test or confidence vote for the president. Until now, President Erdogan have a capacity to win almost all elections since last 15 years. So then there are lots of messages and considerations, but basically this is a system change in Turkey.
I see. Mr. Cleppe, of course, Mr. Erdogan has been quite a controversial figure if you look at the press coverage about him over the past 1 decade. What do you think eventually, if the voters go into the polls and decide on a different system, what would that mean for people's assessment of his governance, at least in his own country?
Well,
also, there's another discussion here.
Mr. Cleppe, please. Yeah.
To give Erdogan more power, and that's the whole point of everything. It basically makes Turkey more into a typical Middle Eastern state with a strongman. I don't think this is a good thing for Turkey. Erdogan will, in practice, be able to remain in power until 2034. He will have more influence over the justice system, over the parliament. This is a very bad thing for Turkey, I think.
Professor Colakoglu, though, when our guest from Brussels talk about a typical Middle Eastern state, he has some adjectives. Do you agree necessarily with Mr. Cleppe about these adjectives? And where do you think is the aspirations for the Turks now inside Turkey? And of course, I'm talking about different kinds of ethnic groups inside Turkey, of course.
Also, there's no unification or consensus here, the reason behind the constitutional amendment, and also the results and outcome of the referendum. So here, when we look at the ruling camp or yes campaign, they usually underline the importance of the more powerful executive to get more concrete and more efficient application of some policies, and also a more efficient way to get to facilitate the development and political decision-making process. So this is the government is saying, this is the very necessary steps to get more powerful Turkey with the stability, economic prosperity, and more development in general. But on the other side, no campaigners underlining that this is an undermine of the essence of the Turkish democracy, and also they also pointed out there is a very poor system for check and balances. So here there are conflicting arguments for that. So there is no consensus right now in Turkey.
Mr. Cleppe, what about those arguments? I mean, on the one hand, there seems to be suggestions about the illiberal nationalist government, even though it could also be called so-called a democracy. On the other hand, there is a very different kinds of political descriptions about Turkey, probably in the future if a referendum goes the other way. So either way, can Turkey still have a future, or it has to follow certain kinds of political mode and model in order to be somewhere, from your perspective?
Turkey has grown a lot because
let's
it has
go
been
to Mr. Cleppe.
Open for
Sorry.
business.
Professor, I'll go to you later.
Open for trade. So this was prepared also by the governments before Erdogan to open up the country, to make it more competitive. And Erdogan, at the beginning of his term, to his credit, has pursued that path. But the idea that it should be easy for the government to get things done is completely wrong. The government has enormous powers. It's a healthy thing that the government is constrained both by the court system, by the constitution, by the parliament, and that there's a balance of power. That's very important in order to keep government accountable and keep them in check.
But Professor Colakoglu, you also see different kinds of state models in other countries, for example, in Russia. So people are asking what is wrong with, let's just say, quote, a nationalist government, as being argued by some of media reports inside your country and some of the intellectuals. They also argue, why can't we guarantee so-called more stability in order to develop our own country, as they argue. What do you think, Professor? Professor Colakoglu?
Hi. Yeah, okay. So here also there is a confusion for that. But when we look at the government side, so they underline the efficient way of the decision-making process, and also the underlining the political stability and economic development and prosperity for that. So of course the Turkish government is agree on that. This is a new model. So Turkish presidential model will be a model for the developing nations. So this is a new model, new practice. So they certainly refuse that. This will be cause some certain illiberal outcomes. So this is the point of the Turkish government right now. Of course, there are objections from the no-sayers for this perspective. So there is different explanations for that, but this is the situation in Turkey.
Right. And now we are also joined by Dr. Bulent Aliriza, Director and Senior Associate for the Turkey Project at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. He's joining us from Washington, D.C. in the U.S. Dr. Aliriza, welcome to our program. I want to ask you the same question the other two gentlemen already answered. That is, I hope you could hear my voice. That is, what about the future of Turkey? Whether you want to have, some of the argument goes, stability vis-a-vis a different kinds of illiberal nationalist system. Dr. Aliriza, can you hear me? We still have some problems getting close to Mr. Aliriza. We'll go to him later in our program. So let's continue, gentlemen, our discussion. Since both of you have already expressed your views about this question, it seems that Professor Colakoglu, you don't want to necessarily stand in any of the team for the argument. So let me go to you with some specific ones. For example, in Turkey, there are specific challenges. One challenge is there are different kinds of people inside Turkey. You see problems existing with jihadists. You also see the Kurdish rebel forces, which the Turkish government consider as problematic. Secondly, you also see the economy not necessarily doing well at all, particularly with instability, tourism down, and poor management as well. Thirdly, you also see Turkey having certain kinds of differences between itself and the rest of the European Union, which Turkey is so eager to join, at least a year ago. So, with all of these in mind, what kind of leadership, what kind of political system do you think, Professor Colakoglu, will be able to get your country over with this transition?
Yeah, well, this is a very difficult question to answer.
That's why I asked you, sir.
Everybody is seeking the answer for that question, but there are different perspectives. First, to identify the problems at the first stage, and also promoting some solutions for that. So unfortunately, right now in Turkey, there is no consensus, not only for different camps, parties, but also within the parties also, even within the ruling AK party and also the other opposition parties. So there is no certain definition of the problems, and also there is no certain solution for some certain problems. This is the difficulty of that, and also the polarization in general within the Turkish society will be obstacle to address the questions and problems properly. So I think, in my opinion, it is really difficult to say that there is a simple, how can I say, solution for that. I think the critical point here, Turkish society in general and Turkish politics particularly need more consensus rather than confrontation. This is the key point, I think.
Now I am joined now once again by Dr. Aliriza. I hope you can hear me well. Dr. Aliriza this time?
I can indeed. The technical issues are over.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. We earlier asked the other two gentlemen about what kind of political system that will get Turkey over the current challenges, both economic and also internal politically, as well as relations with the EU countries. What do you think?
Well, I mean, clearly, this is a momentous referendum. In one sense, nothing will change because President Erdogan, who's effectively running the country, although Turkey is still technically a parliamentary system, will continue to do so, irrespective of what happens in the referendum. But and nothing will ever be the same again because the Constitution, once it's changed, will give him immense powers. Now, the argument that the President has been making is that, that by voting yes, it will guard against further instability, and it will allow Turkey to make progress both in the economy with respect to its relations with the outside world. Those who are against it are saying the opposite. And certainly with respect to the EU, I'm pessimistic about the ability of both sides to pick up the relationship after the kind of rhetoric that we've seen throughout this campaign. Frankly, from both sides, the relationship is as bad as I've ever seen.
As bad as it ever seen, Mr. Cleppe, I'm sure you have a better understanding of this since you're joining us from Brussels. So do you think the EU wants to have an opinion about where Turkey is going, despite what the media has been reporting about? Secondly, whatever Turkey decides on its political system, how do you think the EU is likely to react to it?
Well, I think, of course, most people in the EU would like Turkey to become more democratic, not less democratic, not concentrating power in the hands of one strongman. That's pretty clear. Now, that said, the European Union will try to work with Turkey in whatever way possible. I mean, there is the EU-Turkey deal on the migration crisis, which has contributed to stopping it, but it's not the only reason why the migration crisis has stabilized. This is also because the Balkan countries have closed the border. So Europe isn't that dependent on Turkey at all. It's actually the opposite. Turkey is really risking its tourism industry over further increasing the tension. So I think Erdogan, he should do well to tone down a little bit and to be more diplomatic, especially given what he has been saying in the last few months.
Dr. Aliriza, how valuable is Turkey still for the European countries or the EU as a whole, both in terms of refugees coming from Syria, and secondly in terms of trade, thirdly in terms of Turkey as a hub towards some of the very important areas, both the Middle East and some of the others?
Well, I mean, the Turkey-EU relationship was based on the European recognition of Turkey's importance and Turkey's recognition of the vital importance of its own relationship with the EU. Now, trade will continue irrespective of what happens. Turkey will continue to trade with the EU as its most important trading partner overall. But whether Turkey will ever be a member of the European Union, whether it will ever integrate itself into the premier Western political system, just as it integrated itself in the Western security system, NATO, over 60 years ago, is now debatable. Now, there is a lot of resentment within Turkey, and President Erdogan's speeches give rise to it over the EU, the West in general, about how they've been treating Turkey. And frankly, that's reciprocated by the European side. So I see dark clouds over this relationship, in spite of all the positive benefits that you talked about when you were asking me the question.
Professor Colakoglu, what do you think? I mean, on the one hand, you have got the Turkish side accusing German and also the Dutch of, quote, Nazis because these two countries refused the national political campaign taking place in their countries. Actually, it should concentrate, as they argue, in Turkey itself. So do you think this is going to be a good preface for Turkey to continue its negotiation, and particularly now with a referendum about its entry to the EU?
I think we need to wait the end of the referendum in Turkey and also the election process in some certain European countries, particularly in France and also in Germany. So then we have a chance to consider the relationship between Turkey and the EU more calmly in general. So in Turkey right now there are also some conflicting messages from Turkish leaders, pro or anti-EU statements every day. But I think there will be some consideration for that. There are two main points Turkey needs to address after the referendum. One is the refugee deal with the EU. Right. Turkey has no intention to cancel it, but also Turkey is demanding the free visa deal with the European countries for Turkish citizens. This is the must for Turkish government. The other is the redeliberating reconsidering the customs union with the European Union under the new age of the free trade deals. So I think these two articles will be important after the election processes in Turkey, Germany, and France in general. So I think we will have a new course for the relationship. But I don't believe that there will be a split or there will be a quit for the relationship or severe the relationship. When we look at the size of the importance of the relationship.
Dr. Aliriza has been waving his hand. Of course, you seem to have a quite different opinion.
I do indeed. This is not the kind of thing where you can just switch on and off like with a light. The worsening tensions between Turkey and EU are not going to end overnight after the referendum or after the elections in Germany and France. I mean, let's not forget that there is a crisis within the EU itself with Brexit, and there was a lot of the angst about whether Turkey really belonged in the EU. There were many countries, and opinion polls in most of the countries had confirmed those doubts. Now, in the referendum, a lot of xenophobia and anti-EU sentiments came to the surface, and I just don't believe that those are going to be eradicated after the referendum. And then we're going to be discussing Turkey's role in the overall picture, whether it's going to ever be a member of the EU, whether it will actually get more involved in the Middle East, in Syria, Iraq, and beyond, and what its relationship will be like with the United States, particularly now that Mr. Trump has reversed 8 years of Obama's policy towards Turkey.
A lot of things going on. Mr. Cleppe, I guess it's really your turn to respond to that.
Well, I think going forward, the European Union should make clear to Turkey that there is very little chance that it can become a member of the European Union. But that doesn't mean that there should not be some kind of a constructive relationship. And it's probably good to try to finally settle this and be more honest and basically try to arrange a deal with Turkey which foresees that as much trade between the two parties is possible.
Before we go, we do have 30 seconds to every one of you because we want to ask the question. Sunday, people are going to the polls already. We only have 2 days to go, less than that. So what's likely to happen within the next decades of hours that's going to influence the election? Otherwise, what do you think is likely to be the result? Let's go to Professor Colakoglu first, very briefly, 30 seconds.
Now there are 2 days on for the referendum, but still in Turkey right now, nobody knows the certain outcome for that. There are different surveys. So there is a very slight difference for yes and no campaigners. We will see on Monday evening the certain outcome, and also we will deliberate the results later.
Mr. Cleppe, what about you?
I think and I hope it's going to be a no, I think Turkish people are slowly seeing through some of the lies of Erdogan.
All right, Dr. Aliriza, final words.
Well, you know, the fact that the country is split almost evenly down the middle is the most significant part of this referendum. It's not going to be a clear-cut choice either way. And frankly, I see more instability afterwards, whatever happens.